My eye was so itchy. What even makes an itchy eye? This video is an introduction to the diet, an overview of the ketogenic diet, where it came from, its history, what it is, to potentially clear up some misconceptions about the diet that you may have had, as well as to inform you as to what it is going forward as you learn more about the diet. Section 1. The history of the ketogenic diet. The earliest history of the ketogenic diet comes out of the clinic. In the early 1920s, certain physicians and clinicians had started treating drug-resistant epilepsy through fasting. Yes, fasting is not the diet. However, the two are inextricably intertwined. A physician by the name of Dr. Russell Wilder, operating out of the Mayo Clinic, was using fasting as a treatment for his drug-resistant epileptic patients, many of which were children. There's a big problem using fasting as a treatment for any disease. You can only do it for so long. At a certain point, you die. Dr. Russell Wilder created the first ketogenic diet, the aim of which was to mimic a state of fasting. But actually, you're eating. How did he do that? Well, he cut down on carbohydrates enormously, as well as cutting down on proteins. We'll get to the macronutrient compositions of this diet a little later, but suffice it to say, Dr. Russell Wilder created the first ketogenic diet and coined the term. The diet would stay within the confines of a clinical setting, being used to treat patients who had epilepsy. As drugs got better and better at treating epilepsy, the diet began to get phased more and more out, until only a few clinics, most notably a clinic at Johns Hopkins University, was using the diet for the treatment of epilepsy. The diet would become somewhat unknown for a very long period of time and existing only in a few clinics, until around the 60s, when the Atkins diet was produced. This was the first time that the diet escaped from the clinic and entered mainstream dieting conversations. And since that point, it has stayed in circulation as a commonly referenced and commonly practiced diet, only getting more and more popular as the days go on. The original diet, made to treat epilepsy, was a diet wherein you would consume something in the ballpark of 85% of your daily calories from fats, about 5% or less, even down to 0, carbs, and about 5 to 10 of protein. So it was an extremely high fat, incredibly low carb, also low protein diet. The Atkins diet changed things up a little bit, made it a little easier for people in their average day in life to do the diet. In the Atkins diet, you consumed about 70 to 75% of your daily calories from fats, about 20 to 25 from protein, and about 5 or less from carbohydrates. So, whether in the clinic or outside of the clinic, one consistent thing remained the same. Carbs were low. So that's where the diet has come from. Now, in recent years, it's become extremely popular amongst all sorts of folks. Those in bodybuilding competitions, those who are trying to reach specific dietary goals within a specific amount of time, casual dieters, people who try and take a very active role in their health. All of these individuals use the diet, and I think it is a very popular diet for a good reason. But I want to touch on that previous point that I mentioned earlier, which will help us understand what the diet is and understand, as a consequence, how to do it and get the most out of it. And that is fasting and the ketogenic diet being intertwined. That the ketogenic diet is a fasting mimicking diet. Let's elaborate on that. Section 2. The ketogenic diet as a fasting mimicking diet. To understand this, I think it's important to add a little bit of historical context. And I don't mean our early history in the 1920s or even before that. I mean prehistoric. When we were all cavemen and women, Grug and Grugette, very common names back then, by the way. Most people had that name.
It's like Mark.
Yeah, but then you'd have a middle name that sort of denoted you, so everyone just referred to you as your middle name. Yeah, you were Grugette John Stonesworth.
Right.
But everyone just called you John.
Grugette Smith.
Grugette Smith. Back when humans were faced with the full brunt of the natural environment, there were periods of time wherein food would become scarce. That is the same for humans, and that was the same for all other mammals and other creatures in general. One cool thing about being a mammal is that you've stored fat during periods of time where food was abundant. And now, in a period of scarcity, your body can use that fat to fuel your body. Now, throughout your life, you're going to be using fat all the time for your energy needs. A certain amount here, a certain amount there, particularly if you go longer periods of time without eating or longer exercise bouts. But one thing is not the case. Your brain will continue to be fueled with glucose. Imagine for a second a scenario where we're not consuming any glucose because there's no food available to us. Your brain now does not have a fuel source. Protein can be converted into glucose, but it's a costly process, and protein is extremely important to keep you alive. And again, no food's coming in. Your body needs to preserve as much protein as possible. So, instead of having to consume its very valuable proteins, your body is capable of doing something quite remarkable. It takes your abundant fat stores and converts them into a fuel source that your brain can use. That fuel source are ketones. That fuel source is ketones. So that's why I said that the ketogenic diet is a fasting mimicking diet. Why? Because it puts your body in a similar metabolic state that you would be in if you were totally fasting. And that is to say, not having enough glucose to fuel your brain. When you don't have enough glucose to fuel your brain, your body will start producing ketones. And that is the point of the ketogenic diet. So if we wanted to be really technical and precise about it, we could describe the ketogenic diet as a diet which aims to induce a state of ketosis. A state of ketosis just being a state in which your body is producing a certain amount of ketones, usually measured as about 1 to 3 millimoles per liter of beta-hydroxybutyrate, which is the primary ketone body. That level of detail isn't necessarily relevant, but what is relevant to understand is that the ketogenic diet is one that produces ketones so as to fuel your brain. Fantastic. Section 3. Understanding the diet a little better. Now that we know that the ketogenic diet is a diet which aims to induce a state of ketosis by way of carbohydrate restriction, which is to mimic fasting, we can also start to look at other forms of ketogenic diets and understand why they're contained within the same umbrella. And also understand, I need to understand why this thing seems to work. Man, goddamn, I'm not even eating any carbohydrate and I'm not dying. We can now understand why certain diets are not ketogenic diets. Any diet which induces a state of ketosis could be considered a ketogenic diet. When we refer to the ketogenic diet in general, we're referring to the standard ketogenic diet, SKD for short. But there are other types. There are types of ketogenic diets which cycle in carbs periodically. There are types of ketogenic diets that have blocks of time in which you drop out of a state of ketosis and then re-enter. But for the purposes of our discussion, we're talking about the standard diet. And what is that diet? Well, it's very similar to the one that was articulated first with the Atkins diet. We understand that there are multiple different types of ketogenic diets, but the one we're referring to, SKD, the standard. And the standard is high fats, moderate proteins, and very low carbs. I have heard some people refer to diets such as the paleo diet as a ketogenic diet. It is not necessarily. It can be, but it isn't necessarily. You can think of the ketogenic diet, or keto, as a prefix that can be bolted on to any other diet or dieting modality to render it into a ketogenic diet. For instance, you could eat a vegan diet that was keto-friendly. You could eat a paleo diet that was keto-friendly, a pescatarian diet that's keto-friendly, so long as your carbs are sufficiently low so as to induce a biological need to produce ketones, it is a ketogenic diet. With that being said, if you see diets that are advocating for a suspiciously high amount of carbohydrates and yet referring to themselves as a ketogenic diet, that's probably not going to work. If our goal is to induce ketosis, we really do not want to be consuming excess carbohydrates, and that ends up being the entire point of the diet. All of the other concerns can be bolted on, placed in, or considered where relevant. Our fundamental concern is carbohydrate restriction. Section 4. Some important notes about the diet in general as well. No diet is perfect. There isn't a single diet which is perfect for every single person. This diet might be fantastic for you, or it might not be a good fit. Now, you won't know until you give it a good try, and I personally believe that the diet is fantastic, and is significantly more effective for the average person who doesn't want to fuss too much about the process of weight loss. So, I do think it is a great diet to give a shot, but if it doesn't work out, that's fine. This diet might not be for you, but it's going to be pretty good for most people. A quick note on why the ketogenic diet is so effective as I previously mentioned, that it seems to be really good for a lot of people. The reason the ketogenic diet works is much like any other diet that gets you to lose weight. And that is to say, whilst doing the diet, you consume less calories than you need to maintain your weight. And as a consequence, you lose weight. It is a net calorie balance. But what makes the ketogenic diet special is that the process of inducing a calorie deficit, so eating less, feels very comfortable and is often not accompanied with many of the adverse symptoms and side effects of low-calorie dieting, most notably extreme hunger. For many people on the diet, they don't need to count calories. Instead, they naturally choose to eat less because the foods that they're selecting from make them feel very full and satiated. They're disincentivized from snacking due to the often very high content of carbs within snack foods, and, very notably, the state of ketosis naturally suppresses one's hunger, regulates insulin, and regulates people's blood sugar. All of that is very helpful. So, those are some points about why the diet's good, whether it's the perfect diet, why it works, etc. Fuck, I'm so bloody sweaty. Yeah, dude, I gotta do a Pantene ad. Final thoughts. You might have some more questions, many of which were probably going to be great. For instance, do I need to fast? Are certain foods appropriate for the ketogenic diet? Can I eat this? Can I eat that? Can I do the diet with this diet? Should I train while I do the diet? Should I do running or cycling, weightlifting, etc.? All of these questions are important and useful to help you craft the perfect diet for yourself, but they won't be covered here. This is just to give you an understanding of what the diet is and a little bit about what it isn't. So, as a final recap, the ketogenic diet is any diet which aims to induce a state of ketosis by way of carbohydrate restriction. That could be by eating very few carbs or fasting outright for periods of time. The diet that we refer to when we talk about the ketogenic diet is the standard ketogenic diet, which is a diet in which you consume a large amount of fats, a moderate amount of protein, and a very low amount of carbohydrates. And that is what we will refer to when we say keto. That's what the diet is, and that will help you understand further concepts, and those questions I mentioned previously will help you understand the answers to those, and help you make the best diet for you. This diet fucking rules. I do a very low amount of protein and a high amount of protein, and I need a burger.